There would be times in our relationships that it would just feel weird. And what I mean by weird is there was times where it would feel like peaceful as I started working on stuff, and I would have to be like, wait a second, like something's not right. And it was almost like this idea that I had to start an argument in order to blow something up. Like I had to kind of push and prod and poke at different things, just try to see if I could get a reaction out of my wife. One time we were driving along and there wasn't even a cause for an argument. There wasn't anything that was going on. But then I made this statement, and this statement started this piece, and this piece started rolling, and all of a sudden we're knee deep in this giant argument. Then giant argument over nothing, except that I needed to cause an argument. Sometimes in the moment I wanted to cause an argument because I felt this semblance of like this power dynamic that was thrown off. Like I felt that she was getting stronger and she wasn't actually relying on me, that she wasn't like respecting me. She wasn't trusting me the way that I needed her to do this. Just weird, right? Like you wouldn't think that someone in this capacity would be like, hey, you need to rely on me. All of it had to go back to a piece of control. You see, growing up, a lot of my view of love wasn't this connection piece. It was typically this piece of control. I interpreted it as, oh, this is love. And I started to exemplify this on other relationships. One of the first friendships that turned into a relationship was with a girl early on in my high school years. And as I went off to college and we had this connection and this kind of like relationship for a period of time, there was this aspect of when she started to progress, when she started to obtain her own freedom in life, that I started to freak out. There's a particular time she'd waited for a good while to get her driver's license. It just wasn't something that she actually cared about. And later when she went to go get her driver's license and then got a car, there was a piece of me that was actually internally freaking out. But that freak out just didn't stop it internally. It started to spew out onto her. In a bunch of crazy ways, but it started these arguments. We go back and forth, like texting and interacting, and I was just like so frustrated because there was a piece of me that noticed and understood that as she continued to get her freedom, I lost control. Now, for me, I was viewing this control piece as being love. So when she's actually moving out and she's moving away from the sphere of me controlling her, I was like, wait a second. Now she's not going to love me anymore. Now she's going to leave me for someone else. And all this control came down on her so hard that it ended up imploding the relationship. But you have to understand, then I flipped it in my mind. Because I'm looking at it like, oh, I love you, therefore I control you. I love you, therefore, like I'm in control of your situation, of what you want, of what you need. I'm in control, therefore I love you. Then she moves away. Then she's like, okay, I'm done with this. You're way too controlling. You're way too needy, like all this kind of stuff. She like moves away. And then I'm like, oh, she left me. Like, how could she do that? Like there's this piece inside where I'm like, oh. Like I was so frustrated in the moment because I felt like it was like quicksand. It was like something that was like falling through my fingers. And I'm like, wait a second. But I couldn't figure out how to control it. So I ended up losing that relationship, losing that friendship. And the piece inside of that is that I thought control was love. But in doing this, I ended up having to spin the story because she left me. I'm this loving person, and she walked away from me. So it produces this story of rejection. It produces this story of like, oh, I'm not the bad guy. She's the bad guy because she left me. She left the guy that was showing up and super loving and super kind. And you see how this goes south really quick? There's this piece that then I'm distraught, I'm frustrated, I'm hurt, all these things, and all these things I'm manufacturing in my mind to look like the victim. Inside your relationship, do you see the toxic guy, the toxic lack of a man, starting arguments for sometimes no reason at all? Like you would just be sitting there and all of a sudden, poof, argument appears, just like he's rubbing a bottle to get a genie out. All of a sudden, it just magically appears and you're like, Where did this come from? Narcissists oftentimes will use different arguments to establish dominance and to establish control over you. And the hard part is when you see this and you're like, oh, like this isn't actually true. This isn't actually, like, there's no point in us arguing about this. You spend so much time trying to defend yourself, thinking if I just show him that he's actually wrong, then he'll figure it out. You need to understand, you're not debating a logical person. You're not debating a normal person. You're not debating someone who actually gets it. Because they've already believed the lie that they're telling you. They've already believed the piece that they need to tell you so that they can be justified in what they're doing. So like in that illustration that I mentioned earlier, I had to believe that I loved. Like it had to be a soul core belief of I'm a loving person. But that belief was based on control of another person. You see, the narcissist in your life, he has to believe that he is right. He has to believe, like, wholeheartedly that he's a good guy, even if he's hurting, even if he's abusing you. He has to believe it. There's no other option. There's just the option of, like, I have to believe that I'm a good person. Otherwise, I fall apart. Like, otherwise, I go to the pit of shame and guilt. Otherwise, I feel this peace inside of me that's just this giant hole that doesn't get filled. This void that's like there, that's like, wait a second, like that is actually how awful I am. I'm actually that mean of a person that I control other people, that I manipulate other people. I can't handle that. And so I'd run from it. I'd make up stories. I'd make up different lies. I'd make up different things to believe that we're positive, to try to run away from the truth. This is why sometimes in your healing journey, regular therapy hasn't helped you. Because sometimes it's no different than making up stories to try to make you feel better about your current situation. Sometimes it's no different than giving you happy mantras that don't actually deal with the shit that's inside. That don't actually deal with the lies that you've believed, that you've inherited from the toxic person, that you've believed at a core level. And you're like, wait a second, how do I actually change this inside? Because otherwise it tells me that I'm not good enough. It tells me that I'm not worthy. It tells me that I'm worthless because of how he's treated me over and over and over again. And oftentimes people will spiral out because they're not sure how to actually change their mindset, how to actually change the story that's going on inside their head. I didn't know how to change it. That was the piece that I was lost in for such a long period of time. Now I've had the opportunity of rewiring the story that I believe hundreds and thousands of times to get back to truth, to get back to reality. Because if I don't, I will slip into this place of like, let me just cause an argument so I can get control. Let me just cause an argument so I can look dominant. Let me just cause an argument so I can be right. When in reality, all that is ridiculous. Because so many times I was fighting and having these giant arguments to try to prove a point, to try to be someone that I wasn't, to try to show that I was right when I was actually wrong. So many different times I was trying to have this piece be justified or feel good about myself. Like all of these things to try to look a certain way when in reality, I was just lying to myself. I was just telling myself a different version of reality so that I could stay stuck. I'd never get out. I would never transform because I wasn't looking at reality through a lens of truth. Here's the hard part today is you're looking at these videos and you're looking at the toxic person in your life and you're realizing that you haven't always looked at your life through a lens of truth. In fact, too many times you've been believing his version of reality. You've seen what he said and you've believed what he said over his actions. You believe the positive stuff that he's been telling you versus the actual negative stuff he's actually doing to you and that you're seeing on a day-to-day basis. And it's starting to mess with your head. Starting to mess with your head and you know that something's not right. You get that pit, that gut feeling, and you're like something is wrong. I just don't know what it actually is. I'd have you consider it might be the stories that you're believing. It might be the lies that you're receiving. It might be the piece of reality that you're just looking at and being like, that's not true, but yeah, it's probably true. Have you had moments like this? Where you're confused, but you still stay? Where you're confused, but you still like relinquish your control to him? Narcissists will get you to argue to establish this dominance, this control over you. Narcissists will get this arguments there to be able to spiral you out, to make you spend so much time trying to justify yourself, trying to come back, trying to be like, that's not me. But he's still got control over you. He's still manipulating you. He's still letting pieces of ego come in that have to justify, that have to explain, that have to show the actual logic and the reasoning when he doesn't even care about that. He just cares about getting a reaction, a response, and controlling your response to him. If you're struggling with this today and you're a woman trapped in a toxic relationship, I want to show you how we help people go to freedom. From trap to freedom is what we help people with every single day. Go to rawmotivations.com/breakthrough to see how I actually walk people through this, how we change the mindset of what you're seeing, what you're believing, so that you get back to reality, back to grounded in truth, because that's the only thing that will set you free. Please reach out today if you're ready to go from trapped to freedom.